Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
Okay, this is going to be a fun one. I enjoy these. Make sure you are subscribed to all three channels, Evolutionary, EEARTS, and also Heart's Home. We were talking about using the elements to heal and strengthen ourselves. Yes, there's so much available to us in this benevolent matrix that we find ourselves in, which is basically been subverted by a malevolent matrix. Yes. So David Grush has been going on interviews here and been letting more and more out. Now, I think they have to because, again, people are going to realize things. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence, no matter how much they want to cover up everything, no matter how much all these incessant wars have given them the opportunity to go in and destroy relics and, past history, past technology, past knowledge. They still can't, completely cover up all this, especially when there's ongoing contact between various extraterrestrial, interdimensional beings and people here on Earth. It's impossible to cover it all up. And also because we are changing, we are awakening, we are literally having turned back on DNA that was intentionally turned off by the power structure.
Mm-hmm. And, they can try to cover it up, but you cannot stop the nature of things, and the natural course of things is happening to where people are seeing and experiencing more and more things, and they can keep shoving it under the rug, but that's only going to last for so long. The bubble is going to burst, and I feel they're kind of up against a wall before people really truly figure it out for themselves. It's better that they put the information out there in a controlled manner.
Yeah, and we'll try to explain things as clearly as possible because, again, to us, we've kind of always had this whole picture. We've always known that we're not alone. Cindy and I have always understood that there's extraterrestrials. It was never a question. And this is partly because of past incarnations and also partly because of DNA legacy, as well as, the interactions we've had with our own family members. Again, I've shared with you guys how my dad was a big, quiet guy. He didn't speak a lot. He was somebody that went through 12 years of Catholic school. And if you made any sort of ruckus, he would tell me they would rap him on the knuckles or rap him on the head with a ruler. So he was very quiet. And then he was in the military. So again, it's another thing where you're just awaiting orders and you don't share unless you're asked to share. But the one thing that he only told me, he never told even my mom or my sister, was that he knew there were extraterrestrials out there. He knew it, and he never elaborated on that. And he didn't elaborate on it because he wanted to keep me safer. And even now, when Cindy can contact him, he still won't really go there. He really won't talk about it. And again, it's because we are behind enemy lines, so to speak. Yes, there's always been extraterrestrials here on this planet. And as we were sharing, in fact, this planet has been restored to a functioning biosphere by intelligences that are not from here. Now, it doesn't mean, it certainly is not the dark draconian grid that did benevolent actions. No, they're the ones that actually took out Tiamat. And Tiamat was the earth before the earth was. And so when you see a lot of fossils and things of gigantic, incredibly gigantic stature, like the works of Mudfossil University, for instance, and what he focuses on, a lot of what we're seeing is relics of Tiamat and not even Earth.
Mm-hmm. And I see a lot goes into, at least in the earlier days, keeping things under wraps with my father. Very similar situation in the military. It really felt like he was not allowed to speak about anything that happened in the military, but the things that he did tell me were bone chilling now, but in many ways he was trying to prepare me as a child for an adult life where these abilities are going to come in, and there's not much you can do to stop them once they're implanted, once they are ignited through certain things that they do in the DNA. It's like you just carry that over, and it's not an easy situation. I think he tried really hard to protect me from that too, understanding that the world around me was not going to really welcome my abilities very easily. So he did his best to protect that too, and that's what families do. They, but now I see that these things are being more embraced, and children who show obvious abilities are being more accepted, and the parents are helping them along rather than trying to stifle them and just shut it up, just cover it up because of, what might or might not be social norms. And more parents are allowing their children to be and to explore the world around them, and not so that the child is controlled and only answers when spoken to. A lot of that is starting to break up, but it does take generations, because it took generations to get to the point that we're at, where we're all so stifled and traumatized, and we just have to do a little more unraveling.
Yeah, absolutely. And both of these men come from certain lineages, that's, again, the indigenous populations that were here, that were persecuted and then pushed into reservations ultimately, and had their way of life taken away from them. This is what the system does. And, when we look to the British exploitation of India and the takeover of India, India is the heart of the leftover knowledge of past ages, as so many indigenous people, again, across the globe have been completely persecuted. It's part of the wiping out of those that know and can share the real truth, the fact that, no, we've never been alone. And in fact, we're under a hostile extraterrestrial power structure, and we have been our entire lives. But we are going to have the opportunity to leave that. So when you see former NRO and NGA officer David Grush, who's written a document that seemingly alludes to agreements between world governments and non-human intelligence behind UFOs, you got to know that if he was part of the power structure here on the planet, now he's actually part of the dark matrix. And so his disclosure is going to be one that's going to be slanted from their perspective. They can't hide it. So what are they going to do? They got to utilize it for their benefit. So you're going to, have them foster fear of other agencies out there. And again, it's the way they do things. They are like, very much like the mob. Hey, you got to pray for protection. Well, who do we need to be protected from? It's really the mob. And this is the same thing. It's, the governments are going to say, again, there's ones out there that might come and take us over at any time. So, again, you better trust us. And then at some point in time, they're going to show their allies that they've been working with, or, hey, these great bunch of guys, these tall, Pleiadian looking guys are really here to help us, these giants. Yeah. And in reality, they're the ones that have been pulling strings from behind in the shadows the entire time. It's pretty obvious what they're going to do. And in this interview here, he alludes to the fact that humans have lost their lives due to non-humans. Yes, he verifies that and doesn't go into detail. Says he can't go into detail, but he does verify that. Well, yeah, and right now, to this day, humans are losing their lives to non-human entities and their plans. I mean, it's It's the entirety of the system that we're in. And this is why, we are facing such a hard go trying to get this word out there, because we've known their plans the entire time. And how could we know? Well, because we're actually, working on the other side to free humanity and knowingly doing it. To try to show how, they've given us our fundamentalist religious points of view in order to keep us in a fear-based system. So we are afraid of anybody but them. This is really what's going on here. So disclosure is coming. Of course, disclosure with a twist. The twist is going to be trying to get you behind the draconian power grid. And, a lot are probably saying, well, if I see something reptilian, I'm not going to necessarily trust it. When you look to what they do, this is a Chitauri, a representation of a Chitauri from Marvel Comics. So when we look at modern mythology and Marvel Comics, they're, with the movies and all, they're getting us ready for this merger of aliens and tech, where some beings are, partly biological, a lot of tech inside them and around them, and some are kind of reptilian-based, insectoid, all different types, some relatively humanoid. And when you go and you look for Chitauri, what do you find? It's a fictional race of extraterrestrial shapeshifters appearing in the American comic books published by Marvel Comics, specifically in Ultimate Marvel, created by Mark Miller and Brian Hitch for the Ultimate Universe franchise. Okay, but the reality is, this name is much, much older than that. It actually comes from Zulu and African legends of this race of extraterrestrial reptilian shapeshifters, which goes along perfectly with everything David Icke has been giving us for years. And in fact, these came, and their stories are still out there. And, their stories are also stories that are shared not just in Africa, but in the American Southwest, all over. Again, if you just look a little bit deeper, you'll see we all had these stories. They're going over, they're rewriting them. They're turning them into Marvel fiction, but the reality is, they've been passed on. The Chitauri, reptilian beings that control humanity. It literally means those who make the law. It is believed that these beings did many things to us when they arrived on Earth. And, again, 3-meter tall creatures with different social classes. Some have horns on their heads. We see a lot of depictions of horns on their heads. Some have wings and a huge tail. It gets into it. And then we start seeing this over here. This was found in Japan, a representation just like the description that's given in Africa, and we find this all over. They believe in slavery. Again, you could go right into Colossians and see, slaves, obey your earthly masters just as you would obey your non-earthly masters. And that's in Colossians. That's in the New Testament. It's in the Old Testament too. It's pretty obvious what's going on for those that are awake and are free of the programming that they indoctrinate us with, because they do indoctrinate us with this, and they distort. And it's even in the Bible. And as I shared with you, I think I was in my late teens. I think I was 19 when I was, deep in it, and all of a sudden it hit me clearly that, again, we're not talking about myths and allegory. We're really talking about extraterrestrial manipulation the whole time. Now, I've always known that extraterrestrials were there, and so has Cindy, because, again, it's not just me and Cindy, it's our parents and our kids that have had contact with different races of beings too. And this is what happens with people that are on a list where they watch certain, people, because they understand too. They understand who we are, even if we don't understand who we are. They could keep track of us when we're in the body and when we're not in a body. If, again, we don't venture too high up.
And it's just it runs in families. That's very, very true. The abilities, and a lot of times they have a lot of safety nets. If someone has abilities, they have a way to keep them from advancing them. And one of those ways is just simply through a lot of stress. Just if you're not able to really mesh with this world, that you're different, that's just going to stress you. And they know that hampers our ability to use our abilities in any way, shape, or form. Plus, when you do open up these abilities, you want to do it in a very you want to be very careful when you do it. You want to be very slow. You want to be very methodical. And the world that we live in definitely does not make it very easy for us to do that. So it's like, nails on a chalkboard trying to get along in the world that we live in now. But I have a feeling things are going to change in a really big way. We do have a separation of energies ongoing, and that's going to be, I think, a saving grace for many, because I feel strongly, and it's been my experience, that our energy really does not mesh very well with AI. I mean, that's this constant knocking back and forth. The phone's not working, the computer's bleeping out, the machine, when you go to swipe your card, it won't work. You put on a watch, it won't work. So ultimately, naturally, this is going to separate the energies all on its own. But awareness is a really important part of that. If when you know better, you do better.
Absolutely. So this was a photo that was given to us originally, I think, by Third Phase of the Moon. This is from 2019. And this was taken of a face that they say was a gigantic alien face in Antarctica. Huge. And they gave the coordinates, and I'll link, obviously, the links so you guys could poke around, see what you can uncover. This is a very distinctive face. Look at the nose, look at the mouth, look at the eyes, look at kind of a cone-shaped hat or head. Very, very interesting, is it not? Now, is it just some sort of anomaly? Because this is where they took it from here. Interesting. I mean, it's fascinating. When I saw this, I was like, wow. Because we had gotten, through the help of this woman from the UK who was a family member at the time, just before this, and she was a psychic that used a really particular procedure. She would put crystals and selenite, quartz crystals, selenite, in a bowl, a metal bowl. I forget what type of. I think just regular, steel that would reflect back figures. She would ask questions like, can you show me who's in the room right now? Any sort of entities, and then she would take photos and get photos of different faces, and it was really, really curious. She did this many times. On her own, and then even for me, asking me, what would you like me to try to get? And I said, would you get Enki? I'd love to see Enki. And she said, sure, I'll try. And so when she did, this is what we got. And does it not? It looks a lot like that face. I mean, here you have a conical hat. He's wearing some sort of cloak. Here you see his shoulder. This looks like a cloak. Two eyes that seem to match. The nose seems to match. The mouth matches. This looks, to me, very much like what we see with that photo. And this was what she got when she was putting out there, can we see Enki, the being known as Enki? And this is what came up. Very, very interesting, is it not? Because to me, it hit me right away. We got a couple of, pictures with varying clarity. What can you say? I think it's pretty clear. I don't see any problem with seeing the eyes here, distinct nose, the mouth. Again, there's a pointy hat. There's what looks to be some sort of cloak or cape that he is wearing. And, the face looks a lot like that to me. And maybe it's just me. What do you guys think?
I look into the energy. I feel the energy part of things. And when I go between the two different faces, it feels the same to me. This authoritarian type of energy that very powerful and not necessarily very nice. An energy that feels like it has complete control over all things.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at it, could you not see, a pointy hat, a cloak, and a cape? When we think about what the church does with their cardinals and their popes, of course, we've seen references to Dagon and to Johannes, the fish gods with the fish hat. But we can surely also see, again, this looks a lot like what Enki is wearing. And we have more that we're going to share as well with you. I could see, again, the humans mimicking the dress. And now the extraterrestrials did dress the way we were dressing at the time. That was part of them making us feel comfortable when they came down. That's why you see them dressed, in the archaic garb, with all those carvings that we have and paintings, etc. But yeah, you could really kind of see as you see the bishops and the pope, and you get, again, this system is all given to us from on high. Here you have a Dyson sphere in the Vatican. We've talked about this numerous times. What does a Dyson sphere do? Well, it can basically harness the energy from a star. This is an advanced technique that extraterrestrials would utilize to, again, unlimited energy. We don't need quote unquote fossil fuels. No, it's just part of the way to keep us under control. And now they're ready to move to something different. This is what it's always been about. It's just about controlling humans. And, this is something that we came upon that really hit us like some sort of gigantic either elephant or something. This thing is massive. It's hundreds of feet across. It's probably 50 to 65, at least, feet high off the bedrock. And it just felt organic. This is in the desert, not far from Area 51. It felt to us like it was some sort of giant fossil. It had a certain vibe to it.
And if you compare the energies, you look at the aura of things, the energies are mismatched. Like you see the part of the mountain, and then you look at that appendage type thing, and there's different type of light energy coming off of them too. So that's another thing you look at, and you feel and allow energy to go through you, and you can see that there is a definite difference between the two.
Yeah, and we've done so much exploring out there, and we are familiar with Roger Mudfossil, but we laid hands ourselves on so many of these things, touched them, felt them, sense the energy that's there, and know, hey, this was alive at one point in time. This was organic, but life is abundant all around us. As you look at this picture, beautiful, typical woods in the southern U.S. and yeah, here you have that you might look at and say, is that an orb, or is that, just a miscolored piece of wood? And then you got something back in here. It looks again orbish. This one is not on anything. So yeah, this one's quite obviously what we would call a spirit orb. And, it's life. It's consciousness. This is consciousness.
And they can go through the 3D realm, but the interactions with the 3D realm is much different when you're in a consciousness of just an orb. So, you can still show yourself. You can still view nature in a very positive way, but the interaction changes.
Absolutely. And it's resonance. So, at one period in time, I was doing a ton of gardening, and I was doing a lot of meditation. I was really structured in my meditation 3 times a day, every single day. The last meditative timing at evening was like a full hour minimum. And I was seeing orbs everywhere, every single night. Every night, it was just loaded. And this was in an urban area. This was in Connecticut. So you can. It just is a matter of opening yourself up, to seeing these things. And so much of what we see, too, is really intelligence. Beings going by in Merkabas, or what you might take as being plasma. As you can see this, and this is, again, in a more urban area. We've never ever been alone. That's well known too. Again, the shamanistic cultures understand this, and shamans are basically walkers between worlds, walkers between different densities, different realities. When we see, something like this, humans in a disembodied state could look very similar. Now, these bright ones are activated light bodies with Merkabas, and they're consciousness. Again, we are out of body more than we're in the body.
Mm-hmm. I know we spend a good amount of time sleeping and, letting our bodies regenerate and processing information, but also going different places. And this was a particularly difficult night when we took this video, because we were sitting there talking and we were viewing it, and it was so insane because all of these goats that you see there were slaughtered, and the police actually came to our house because they saw that we had a black pit bull, Zeke, and they were wanting to know the whereabouts. Yeah, at the trailer park, and they wanted to know the whereabouts of Zeke because all of these goats had been killed, shredded. And when we went back to look at this video, we found this, well, I think it's a Djinn, it's something that's very not nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very dark. And not only did it slaughter these animals in a physical manner, it also targeted us. And, this shows what we really are facing. Now this, you could certainly call this demonic. It's very, very evil from the point of view that it doesn't regard or respect life as we do. And, it's serving a dark agenda. And we got many, we got video of it and stills as well. And, this is what we were originally doing. Because, again, we were basically looking for a new homestead, and we were in Mississippi, and just south of Hattiesburg, and right next to a military base. And so, again, the military bases house these beings, a lot of them, not necessarily a Djinn like this, but again, our military, unfortunately, is working with the dark ones, and most obviously have no clue that what they are serving is not the people of the earth, but actually the people that put the earth in a slave state that subject the people to all sorts of harms. As you can see, this thing out there, and you can see there the head, and yeah, it's dark. It's completely evil. This is what I think you would call a Djinn, absolutely. And we got a photo of it, and they hate this. And when we started to do this video, they shut down one of our monitors because they hate it every time we share this. And here's the moon. Oh, wait a minute. Is it New Jerusalem? There's a cube over the moon. Yeah, because again, the moon is what we see as a holograph. It is there. It's fourth density. It's not visible to most people, truly. And yet it is a holograph on top of the fourth density, heavenly body per se, that originally wasn't here. It was brought here by the Anunnaki Draconian Alliance.
And when I look at this, regardless of what people might say that it is, I feel technology. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of these jump rooms, but we don't necessarily need to leave the earth to go to another place in our physicality. The technology is really, really, so far advanced, it's very difficult for us to even perceive, let alone really stand in it. But this is something that's a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, and I've shared with you guys too, as we see a couple of different photos of it, that I saw it go totally blank, totally blank. And I think that was a gift from the guides to see it go totally blank. This was a cool cave out in the middle of the Nevada desert. We were hiking quite a bit, and there's a lot of these out there. So again, we didn't go up and in. Cindy poked and peeked in, and she got a nasty vibe, which a lot of these structures, these fossils, I got violently ill when we were close to another fossil, and it's part of what they have going on. This, you might not be able to see it because it's pine straw, but this is a heel down here, and a pretty good sized foot. I'm a size 11, so this is probably a size 13, 14 at least, and it's in pine straw, so it's hard to see. But yeah, when we talk about Bigfoot's a reality too. And, this was taken not far from our old place, and you could even kind of see a big toe that's odd coming out up in here. And we could feel his energy. I could sense him before we saw a footprint. There's a lot of different Bigfoot type beings. And, there's so many vehicles. A lot are ours, a ton are ours, absolutely. And when you say ours, if you're also talking about the non-human power structure that's here on the planet, then that's a ton of them. But there's also so many beings that just come and go all the time from Earth. They still do. There's tons of beings that come and go that, they're not on either side in this big battle. They're just either, doing business, poking around, curious. There's tons of beings that are just completely curious as to what's going on. There's a lot of them that are just watching us saying, okay, this is the point in time when they start waking up. So this is the fun time. Do you want to watch? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and they do.
It is truly the greatest show on earth when we reach this time of our cycle. And there's many beings who are in a state of just observations. There's beings who are watching that, we might label them here as humans, scientists, because they like to observe and study and see how we are evolving. How are we making our way forward? And when we talk about the very top of this control structure, it is not human. It goes beyond that. It's an entity that has power over these humans that claim to be powerful. Really, they're just doing what they are told. And many of us, we are breaking away from the herd. We're realizing that, hey, I don't want to follow those ones off the cliff. I'm not going to follow into that box. I'm not going to follow, into that really bad situation. I'm going to find my own way, my own understanding. And those are the ones that really make them nervous, because we can show others how to do things that are going to help them and how to live without the power structure. They don't like that.
So this is not anything that we wrote, and this was written in 2008 by a couple people that have studied the Vedas and other sources of information. So I'll just give you a little bit of their overview. There are 32 varieties of human species on this planet, derived from a proto-group of 3. The Rig Veda and other Vedic texts gives vivid descriptions of the human family tree. The Proto-Vedic and Vedic cultures that presently trace to 11,000 years into antiquity proclaim to be a society based on non-human contact with ETI and ultra-terrestrial intelligences like the devas that we talk about. When we talk about these devas, you can think of extraterrestrial intelligences of all sorts. And then the devas, some of these devic beings are so far beyond being categorized as an extraterrestrial species because of where they are in their own particular evolution. In this most archaic account, mankind is not solely derived from this planet, but is part of a higher genome that is holographically dispersed throughout the universe. Some 432,000 humanoid races and their various planetary worlds and societies are described in the Vedic texts that are procured and even scribed by such exo-contacts. Yeah, in other words, again, when we talk about the rishis, who are the rishis? The rishis themselves have been equated, those are the writers of these texts. They have been equated with ascended masters, beings that have no need to come down and learn anything else new. They just simply come down to help guide humanity. As the Earth moves fully into a fourth dimensional frequency, hadronic horizon configuration and consciousness in the consciousness time zone of 2,000 years, which is not as you count time, but a level of consciousness, it begins to merge with other planetary systems. And the consciousnesses of ETIs, UTIs, HTIs, etc., that are exploring the other planetary systems. They begin to collapse into a harmonic resonance where they indeed meet the future, meet the past and the future converge into the present. So interesting stuff to think of as you hear of all these different species and 3 million species of different animals. It goes on and on. This is well known. Now these type of truths or little nuggets of knowledge are given to us in the golden and the silver age, and the distortion really truly starts to take hold in the bronze age, of which we are in now. But we're going the reverse direction. Now we're heading on up and out, so we're climbing into clarity from the darkness.
Mm-hmm. And one thing they like to do is they like to prevent or prolong their ability to keep control for as long as possible. And why wouldn't they? But the more aware we become and the more we spend reaching others with the light of information, the better off it's going to be when these separation of energies do occur, and so many people see things differently or in a different way, and they might be given a hard time because of their perception and being called silly or, no, that's not a real thing. Perception is a funny thing. You can explain things that you don't have enough vocabulary words for, or the vocabulary words that you do have, somebody might not like, and they might complain about that. But you channelers out there, we are all just trying to bring information to you to the best of our ability, but we all see a little bit differently. So we got to give each other the grace, the space, the love, and the understanding that, hey, I see something out there, but it's a little bit different than what you're thinking.
Absolutely. It's time to move past the shadows and the illusions and understand the reality. As always, guys, thank you for your support over on Patreon and also on Ko-Fi. We couldn't do it in this time of demonization, which will hopefully be over, but we won't have need of a monetary system in the future because, again, we'll understand it just has to be an even energy exchange. And people are understanding that right now. People really are getting it, which is a magnificent thing. That was what will move us out of this darkness into the light. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.